Hey, it's pot of gravy day. Well, again, I'm going to tell you that I really think this should be really fast. It's the meatballs that usually take a long time. So I'm going to just give you all the ingredients first. I think that makes it a little bit easier for anybody who really doesn't make Italian and doesn't make gravy ever. Blows my mind because it's so easy to do. But onions, garlic, my favorite chili peppers, dried chili peppers from Joey G's Daddy, fresh basnagal, basil, you call it basil. Nanny's been growing basnagal in pots forever, and that's what we called it, basnagal. So that's what it is. I don't use sausage because my husband doesn't like sausage. My kids aren't really big sausage lovers either, but I do use pork, and I like the spare ribs. I like them because there's a lot of meat, and yet there's still that little bit of fat, and it flavors the gravy really nicely. So I use the pork spare ribs. Usually it says for barbecue. Key thing to do when you have a pot of gravy that you're making, big ass pot, really big ass pot. That's key. And the reason is, if you're going to make a pot of gravy, there's no reason why you can't have leftovers, right? Unless, of course, you're like my family. And in my family, there's pretty much very rarely any leftovers. If we make just Sunday gravy and it's just all of us on Sunday, and by all of us, I mean my mom, my sisters, my aunts, our immediate family. For us, there's really none left over. If I make it and it's just my immediate family, meaning my children, my husband, my kids, then I always have leftovers. And then I take the leftovers and I use them for eggplant parmesan, chicken parmesan, something during the week. Now, the first thing you're going to do is heat up your oil just a little bit. It's a couple of tablespoons to just fill the bottom of the pot. Not too much oil. You don't want too much oil. And then with my pork spare ribs, I salt and pepper them. So, a little bit of salt. And I am addicted to fresh ground pepper. So that's really all I ever use anymore is fresh ground pepper. And what you're going to do is you're just going to basically brown the pork in the olive oil. So you want to let it, simmer slowly, not too crazy, for a couple of minutes. You hear the nice sizzle. Don't worry if it sticks to the pan. You see this one has some fat on it. Typically, anytime I buy any kind of meat, I cut off or trim off as much of the fat as I possibly can. I use the pork specifically so I have a little bit of the fat which flavors the gravy. I don't cut it off at all. So you're going to simmer these or brown these on low. Now, you're not going to cook them through. They'll cook through and they'll simmer in the gravy as it cooks. For me, let's talk tomatoes. I know that there's a big deal about the San Marzano tomatoes. Now, if you don't know what San Marzano tomatoes are, those are the tomatoes that come from the San Marzano region of Italy. So they're imported tomatoes, which of course makes them very expensive. I don't need the expensive tomatoes. I got addicted to them for a little while. And then after a while, I started to notice, I don't think I really taste any difference in my gravy. So I stopped using them, and guess what? My gravy's just as good as it always was. People that tell you that they only use the San Marzano tomatoes, there's nothing wrong with that. They're just more expensive. So I use the Tutto or the red pack. They're pretty much the two that I'm addicted to. I will buy the San Marzano if they are on sale. So occasionally I'll buy them. But even the Tutto and the red pack, I buy whichever ones are on sale. So typically I put in no less than 6 cans. So anybody who makes a pot of gravy and tells you that they only make 2 cans or 3 cans means they don't like a lot of gravy on their macaroni, or maybe they just don't have it for leftovers. In our family, it's like soup. Every time we serve a dish of macaroni, there's a good 2 ladlefuls of gravy on top of it, and then we sop it up with the bread, and you put a lot of cheese, and it's delicious. Oh my God, the smell. Now, some people put ravioli, some people put sausage. Don't crowd your pot. If you're going to do more than 1 or 2 kinds of meat, do a little bit meat at a time. Make sure you get the ends, each of the ends, get them all brown, nice and brown and crispy. Some of the meat will stick a little bit to the bottom of the pot. That's good, it's flavor. Scoop it up. When I have leftover red wine, I'll actually take the red wine and I'll stir it into the pot to just kind of loosen up all the drippings and get all the meat stirred in. I like it with red wine, but if I don't have red wine, I don't go out and buy it specifically because I'm making a pot of gravy. So if you have a nice deep red wine, dry red wine, add a half a cup or a cup in, depending on how many cans you use. 6 cans for me minimum. I generally like to go with 8 cans. Don't ask me why the Untitled tomatoes are a little bit bigger. The cans are a little bit bigger than the red pack tomatoes. Just kind of the way it is. Now what you'll do is brown your meat. And you can either, actually it's not too crowded, so I won't take it out. But you could, if you had a lot of meat in here, you could take the meat out and then you can saute your vegetables, your onions and your garlic. Because I don't really have a lot of vegetables in there, or a lot of meat in there, I don't really need to take it out so that I have room to saute my garlic and onion. The reason you do your meat first is because if the onion and the garlic are in there for too long, the garlic could burn. It's sauteing for too long in the hot pan. Okay. So here's your spare ribs. If you make homemade brajol, I love homemade brajol. But it's a lot of work. You know, I'm usually typical not so soccer mom, usually busy, usually trying to get it done. It's usually on a Sunday morning. Kids are still sleeping, so I try to get it all done real quick. And that is just a whole nother process besides making meatballs. I really should make it and then freeze some and, you know, throw it in my gravy every week. I don't know why I don't. I just haven't gotten into the habit. So here's what your pork will begin to look like. Browned, not cooked through. Then I add my onions and my garlic. Now I put in 2 onions because I'm using 6 cans today. And technically you don't really need to put in onions. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Don't ask me why, I don't know why. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't even bother. But really, it tastes delicious with the onions. And I have approximately 2 pieces of garlic per can of tomatoes. So if you're not doing a ton of tomatoes, you don't need a ton of garlic. But I like the flavor, and you know what I say, Nanny always says, the more you put in it, the more flavor your food has. So if you don't have a lot of stuff in it, you're just throwing in tomatoes and garlic, that's not going to be too flavorful. So I like the flavor. And I always put in the peppers with the garlic and onion at the same time. Okay. Now don't forget, if you don't like it too spicy, but you like the flavor of the hot pepper, you just open up the hot pepper, pour out the seeds, and just put the pepper in. That was 1. I'm putting 4 small peppers in, 2 with seeds, and 2 without. And then if you like it even hotter, or your family likes it even hotter, or someone in particular who likes it hotter, you can always add hot pepper at the end. But I can't make it too hot because, you know, my daughter doesn't like anything too spicy. Okay, so, oh my God, that smell. Really, Lisa's made the gravy for the past 3 weeks. We were so busy and she was just in the mood for it, so she'd call and wake up and say, oh, I'm making gravy today, and I wouldn't even have to bother making it. But typically we try to take turns between my mother, my sister, and myself. One of us will try to make the gravy. And then we end up on Sunday at everybody's house, one of our houses. Okay, now I'm going to put a little salt again. I'm going to put some more ground pepper. You don't have to put too much ground pepper because if you have the chili peppers in there, you have some spice from the chili peppers. Even though it's a little bit of a different flavor, the chili peppers from the black pepper, it's still spicy, so you don't necessarily have to put too much black pepper. I love these big, oh my God, the smell of basmati is just amazing. In the summer, we grow big pots of it, bigger than this, and they get like bushes, big, huge bushes, and it's amazing. The smell is amazing, and it's so delicious in the summers with the fresh New Jersey tomatoes and some fresh mozzarella, layer some basmati in between, fresh salt, ground pepper, and a little bit of EVO drizzled on top. Oh, to die for. Love. Now, once your onions start to get transparent, you're almost ready to pour your tomatoes in. Believe it or not, we're almost done. Soft, almost transparent. The hot pepper's in there. The garlic is not burned. It's getting just clear to the point where it's just clear, and the juices are sopping up in there from the fat from the pork. Now I pour in my tomatoes, and I'm going to pour in 6 cans. That's the reason for the big pot. Now some people put tomato paste in their gravy. I do not. I used to put tomato paste in my gravy, and I don't know why I don't anymore. I just found that I didn't need it. Tomato paste is good if you need to thicken it, but I think I just shied away from it because I didn't have it one day and it was delicious, so I didn't need it. Have it, I can't help it. I rinse all my cans, I put the leftovers in, excuse me. There we go. Swirl it around, take turns. When I get a professional videographer, AKA my husband or son, you won't have to watch me walk out of the frame. My JoeCampanelli.com fiber towel has the best microfiber towels. That's my best friend. Now, there is something that I do put in my gravy that I don't know that everybody does, but I learned it a long time ago. Stir this well, and you're going to bring it to a boil, by the way. I put in a couple of tablespoons of sugar. The sugar helps to take the acidity out of the tomatoes, and the acidity is what gives you the agita. You know, when you get like that heartburn, how's that? When you get heartburn from having the tomatoes or eating too much, and the sugar takes the acidity out, and it just makes it so much better. So I'm going to put a couple of tablespoons, really just 2. Two tablespoons of sugar. Now while this is cooking, my meatballs are in the oven. I bake my meatballs. And then your basnagal. These are large, huge pieces of basnagal, but you can tear them. Tearing them sometimes releases the flavor out of it if it's not super, super fresh. When I grow it at home, I just take them right off. I pick them off and put them right in. Little basnagal. Little pork. Now you're going to bring it to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, you're going to lower it back down. Put a lid on it, or not. You don't have to, but I usually let it simmer for a little bit without a lid. And if you do put a lid on it, just let it not cover completely. Let a little bit of the steam out and let it simmer for hours. It'll go for 2 hours or more. Just remember, turn or stir from the bottom. If you ever feel like it's starting to burn, if you ever have it in a bad pot, or maybe you didn't pay attention for a minute and it starts to burn, best tip I can give you is don't stir in the burnt part into the good tomato sauce, because the whole thing will be ruined. Well, that's our pot of gravy. I told you it was simple. I told you it was easy. I hope you love it. Make it and have a wonderful Easter. Happy Easter. Bye.